Hello movie lovers, story recaps here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror film called Let Her Out. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. A young woman who stays at the Gemini Motel is shown in the beginning of the movie. A prostitute, a mysterious figure enters her room during a busy night and the invader attacks and raped her. Later, when she learns she is pregnant, she kills herself by slicing her unborn child in half out of loneliness and desperation, but the infant lives. The movie portrays Helen, who survived her mother's fear-induced prenatal assault 23 years after the tragedy. She now lives in Toronto with her best friend Molly as a bike messenger. One day, Helen receives a delivery order to make to Roman, a friend of hers. Helen's birthday is on that day, so Roman gives her a painting that he claims depicts Helen's darker side. Helen takes the painting home right away. Helen tells Molly the tale of her mother's passing at her motel. Molly is really concerned about Helen's state. Helen doesn't have any other relatives, therefore, Molly is constantly there to support her. Soon after Molly departs because she has a date with her boyfriend Ed, Helen gets hit by a car and suffers significant injuries as she returns from the motel. Helen is then driven to a medical facility. She breaks a few bones and sustains a brain injury. After several weeks, Helen is permitted to return home. To celebrate Helen's arrival, Molly and her pals plan a modest party. Helen runs across Ed, Molly's boyfriend, during the party, and he shows interest in her. Helen starts to lose consciousness while the celebration is still going on and experiences a blackout. In an empty parking lot, she awakens. Helen is perplexed by what just occurred. She phones Molly right away to find out what transpired while she was unconscious. Helen departed the gathering without notifying Molly where she was going, according to Molly. Helen rushes back home in a panic, not knowing what has transpired. At home, Helen begins to create odd paintings. Later, out of fear for Roman's painting, she lowers it and covers it with a cloth. The following morning, Helen gets up and goes about her routine of exercising, eating, and taking a shower. She's just getting out of the shower when she starts to see a weird figure. She then falls asleep again and awakens in front of her friends with a hurt foot. Molly and other people are perplexed. Molly tells Helen there that she just carried a towel with her when she left. Helen had vanished for a while. Helen's foot is already bleeding when she gets home. Helen starts to clean the shards of glass off her feet. The following day, Helen and Molly see Dr. Headley for advice regarding Helen's condition. Dr. Headley starts posing some inquiries. Helen explains that she moves from one area to another constantly and subconsciously. She was in one location when she abruptly awoke in another. Since the accident, this has occurred frequently. She also regularly notices a black shadow. The doctor agrees to run a CT scan on her brain after hearing her explanation. The findings will be available the following day. Helen comes home right away and gets into bed. She occasionally has brief images of a woman when she is sleeping. A call from Dr. Headley awakens Helen. Helen is informed by the physician that something weird has occurred to Helen's brain. Helen rushes to the hospital as soon as she hears this. There, the medical professional describes how they found a unique kind of tumor in her brain. It turns out that someone else has been residing in her head for the entire time. It turns out that Helen's mother, who had previously stabbed herself in an effort to abort her pregnancy, was actually carrying twins. Although one of the fetuses was definitely destroyed in utero, it was later absorbed into Helen's cranium. Helen's earlier vehicle accident triggered this long-dormant twin, who is now growing quickly and is to blame for Helen's memory loss and unpredictable behavior. She currently has vanishing twin syndrome, which is a real illness that happens when a twin vanishes in the uterus during pregnancy as a result of a twin loss. The remaining fetus then absorbs the twin into its body. Helen consequently adopts the personalities of both her twin sister and herself. The doctor then advises her to have brain surgery to have her twin removed. She must, however, wait 3 days before the procedure. She later sees the eerie picture that Roman gave her at home. On the wall, the painting appears out of nowhere. She believes Molly was responsible for putting it back, but she wasn't. She ultimately decides to give Roman the painting back. Helen arrives at Roman's home but discovers no sign of Roman. She just sees a video of Helen hurting Roman very sadistically that she found on a laptop. Roman may be seen pleading for compassion in the video. Helen, however, fatally shot Roman inadvertently. None of those come to mind for Helen. As she strolls around Roman's home, she notices broken glass and is reminded of the time she returned home with a hurt foot. Helen is now persuaded that she actually possesses 2 distinct personalities. Helen's twin sometimes has control over her body, other times Helen does. At this point, Helen is aware that her body and mind are at war with her. As soon as she gets back home, she starts to bind her hands and feet to prevent herself from leaving. The following day, Helen starts out for nighttime walks since she is bored at home. But because of her hallucinations, she chooses to use a nearby restroom. She begins to take off the cast from her arm while she opens the incisions on her hands. When she notices another human finger in her hand, she is startled. She then makes the decision to depart. Ed, Molly's boyfriend, starts pursuing Helen from behind. Ed is greatly attracted to Helen's beauty. Consequently, he intends to rape her. Helen's twin then starts to take possession of the body. She then frightens him by brandishing a knife. When she comes to, she gets up and runs back home. Molly then orders Helen to stop creating strange, ominous paintings when she gets home. Helen admits that the drawings weren't actually drawn by her. After much discussion, Helen's twin ultimately takes control of her body and begins attacking Molly. She realizes she could have injured Molly once she regains control. Helen eventually warns Molly to avoid her. Helen resolves to leave the area and avoid Molly as a result of Molly's refusal. Helen meets Ed en route. Because Helen previously pointed a knife at him, Ed wants retribution. Helen starts outlining how she was ill and wasn't the one doing all of it. Ed is going to rape Helen and won't listen to her. Her identical sister begins to dominate Helen's body at the same time, instantly killing Ed. Helen regains consciousness after killing Ed and notices that he has passed away. Helen, who is aware of how risky she has grown, intends to end her life at the Gemini Motel, where her mother previously took her own life. In another room, Molly starts to review the pictures she took with Helen. She compares her before and after photos and notices a big change. She also observes a change in her demeanor. She comes to the realization that there are actually two distinct people living inside Helen. And it wasn't Helen who attacked her. In order to locate Helen, Molly phones her right away. As she bids farewell, Helen reveals that she would hang herself at the Gemini Motel. When Molly hears this, she quickly gets on her bike and heads straight for the hotel. Helen's twin starts taking possession of her body as she is set to commit suicide just after she checks into the motel. Then Molly gets to the motel. But it's too late now. Helen's twin has total control over her body. She goes after Molly right away. Despite Molly's best efforts, she is ultimately compelled to murder Helen. In the closing scene, Molly starts to walk home while thinking back on all her memories of Helen. And so, the film comes to a close. Don't forget to subscribe for more recaps like this, switch on alerts, and give the channel a thumbs up to help it grow. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Let's meet up the next day for another evaluation.